Well, good evening, welcome. Lovely to see all these fantastic Scandinavians. Min kunde är dansk, så jag snackar mildly dansk. But no Norwegian, no Swedish, no Finnish, sorry about that. Anyway, it's just great that you're here using the Cooper-Hewitt Museum for your event. I just have a couple of quick announcements before I hand over to Matilda McQuaid, who will be your moderator this evening. First, you might want to remember to turn off your cell phones if you haven't already done that. I want to tell you about the second in the series, which is tomorrow night, where we have part 2 of the Nordic Design Now design policy lessons learned at Scandinavia House. This will be moderated by Bradford McKee, who's editor-in-chief of Landscape Architecture magazine, tomorrow night. And the discussion will focus on architecture and design policies in Nordic countries, of course, and the knowledge acquired in carrying out those policies. The panelists will be Christian Skjerfi, CEO of the Danish Design Centre, Lavrans Løvlie, you'll see him again after tonight, as he's here this evening as well, Director of liveIwork, Robin Edman, Chief Executive of the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation, Sanna Marie Jonti, Development Director of World Design Capital in Helsinki in 2012, and Halla Dottir, who's the Managing Director of the Icelandic Design Centre. So that's tomorrow. Opening remarks will be given by the Norwegian Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Trond Giske. And both programs are co-presented here by us and by the Scandinavian House and are sponsored by the Nordic Cultural Fund. A couple of other things coming up. We have a series called Bill's Design Talks, one a month roughly. And the next one will be on November the 18th, next week on Thursday, where Shinichi Takamura, a great anthropology professor and media producer from Japan, will be showing his tangible Earth globe and demonstrating it. And then next month, on December the 16th, Thursday, we have Michael Graves making one of the talks. So at this point, please let me introduce Matilda McQuaid, who's our Deputy Curatorial Director, and she'll be your moderator for this evening.
We have quite a few panelists, but as I told them earlier, I feel like I'm at a Miss Universe pageant because we have Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway, and who did I forget? Iceland. How can I forget?
You should have flags.
I know. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the panelists, and then I have some questions. And then what I'd like to do is open it up to the audience afterwards. Let's see, starting at that end. Nille Juul-Sørensen, who is the chairman of the jury of the Index Award in Denmark, and he's also a partner in Arup. And for those who don't know about the Index Award, I know for us, the Triennial curators, it was a very important source of information for socially responsible design. It's all about, it's awarded to 5 people from all around the world, design that improves life. And then Ville Kokkonen, the next. He's design director of Artec, and Artec has been around since 1935, started with the Altos, Alvar and Eino Alto, and really renowned for its innovative and lasting contribution to modern design. And we have from Iceland, Halla Helga Dottir.
Yeah.
Sorry. She is the managing director of the Icelandic Design Center, but she's also a graphic designer in her own right. She'll be representing kind of designers all over in Iceland. And then Lavrans, to my right. Løvlie is a co-founder of the London-based design agency, liveIwork. And as Bill said, he will also be speaking tomorrow. And finally, Stefan Magnusson, who is the founding partner and senior industrial designer in No Picnic, which is a design firm. And I should just mention that both No Picnic and Artec are included in the Triennial upstairs, which I hope if you haven't seen it, that you will have the opportunity to see it before it closes in January, early January. So I wanted to give people some statistics, because when I was preparing for this panel discussion, I wanted to find out how the different Nordic countries compared in terms of population, and then how they compared with New York City, because we are the center of the world. So it was interesting in terms of sort of coming up with these numbers, because Sweden is the size of New York City, Newark, New Jersey, Jersey City, and Trenton put together. Denmark is the size of Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Staten Island put together. Finland is the size of Brooklyn and Manhattan. Norway is the size of Brooklyn and Queens. And then Iceland is the size of Staten Island. And it was amazing to me that such incredible talent comes from countries that are relatively small, at least small in American standards. In fact, all of the Nordic countries combined, it's population-wise, is the size of New York State and most of New Jersey. So that's a pretty phenomenal, I think, sort of understanding of these countries. So I guess my first question, and I would love to have you all answer it from the standpoint of the country you're representing tonight. What makes sort of these Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, sort of the go-to countries for design, and specifically socially responsible design? I know that for us, all the curators for the Triennial, there are 4 of us, we wouldn't have considered not either traveling to one of your countries or at least looking very closely at what is coming out of each of your countries. So I'm just curious, as designers, you are all designers, what is it about each of your countries that make it such a rich, fertile place for design? Who wants to be first?
Yeah,
Lavrans?
Okay.
Okay.
Let the sweet start. I was panicking first. I think we have I think I can speak for all Scandinavians here, that I think we have a really grounded connection with our surroundings, with the land. And I think that we are in connection with what we have around us. I think that is the main thing, actually.
What about the others before I butt in?
I think it's a social awareness that in our countries every man and woman counts, and that means you're very well educated. There's a lot of money going into your healthcare to keep you running, and the way we interact is with it's a way of social stability, but also social awareness that everybody has to be there. So we're very good at negotiations. Mm-hmm. I think we are basically most of us farmers, except Iceland, who came out of the fishing. But the rest is the farmers. So we don't talk that much. We do things. I mean, if we have a good idea, then we try it out very fast and see if it works. And when we do that, the materials we use is, as you say, is very connected to where we are.
What about Finland?
Well, I could agree with this, not talking too much.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just going to be a hard panel.
For the Finns. But I think if we, maybe not, well, at least as a Finn, I can say that we can't really compare that much Finland to Sweden, since you have the royals and Finland is a very young country. And when it comes to, this might be only one direction that I'm pointing out, but I think since it's a young country and Finland really had this situation when companies in the paper pulp industry started booming and Finland was really at the footsteps of this even like 60 years ago there were more horses on the streets than cars. And there was scarcity of materials. We really had to focus on that if you do something, you do it really well. And you couldn't really find only tiny percentage of the 5-point-something million people had the ability to get Rococo furniture or neoclassical furniture, but there was nothing. If I speak on behalf of furniture and products, you had to really either do it yourself, or if it was done for the public, it had to be really long-lasting. I had to survive everything. So that was kind of, I could keep on going, but at least one perspective where things have been done so that they work.
Yeah, from Iceland's perspective, I think we find the other Scandinavians speak quite a lot because we act very fast. But we are a young nation, very young in the design scene. So, but we have a lot. But like the others have been saying, we are very connected to nature. We are very few, quite individualistic, and we tend to. Every person is very important. So we tend to do things right away, good things and bad things as well. So we test it immediately.
I think there's also a really long crafts tradition in all the Scandinavian countries, and particularly when you look at fabrics, when you look at wood, there are hundreds of years of crafts traditions that are still really, really strong, and I think we can see it in that furniture that's coming out of these countries. I think there's another thing as well. Being on the periphery of Europe, we can kind of allow ourselves to be a little bit strange and develop ideas that seem to work well within our small communities, but that might look interesting and surprising when you're more at the center of things.
That's interesting. So geography. What about politics or educational systems? Do you think those have anything to play in terms of design, that that design is more supported? I mean, we always look in awe at, kind of Denmark. I mean, the grants that kind of are given out to designers to help support them. It's something that we don't have here in the United States. Do you think that there's just a greater value placed on design in your countries, more so than, say, here in the United States?
That, we buy stuff that you call designer items. For us, it's just a normal lamp. So that's the problem. And when you have foreign people in your Danish home, they think, you're living in this designer home, right? No, it's actually bought in the co-op, and it was the cheapest choice, but it's very good. So I think, of course, we can, if you buy Arne Jacobsen chairs now, they're really expensive, but I mean, you inherit things from your parents. So it's in the family, this very nice design things. But I think, of course, education is a part of it. Everybody is well educated, but I don't think that we are educated in design. I think it's because it's around you. Because, I would like kids to have more design education, but they don't have it there. But I think it's because it's in society, so everywhere. Every time we do something, we talk about, is this good enough or bad, or is it good design or bad design?
I think in terms of policy, there's a bit of a necessity as well, because we see the industry moving to Asia to produce things, but we're seeing also design moving to Asia. And I think that there's a need in all the Nordic countries to lift the whole design profession, and then you also have to lift the market who buys design to a more strategic level. I think there's a big change in the last 5 years where designs look more as an innovation driver in general than just the shaping of new products. And at least in Denmark and in Norway, there have been some pretty big government initiatives to lift the standard of the whole industry.
Well, when you say you were talking about what you consider design, or what we consider design is not necessarily what you consider design, what is design then? I mean, you say that, you know, if say an American would walk into your home, you wouldn't say it's a designer home, but...
No, I think we have a lot of products that we haven't bought due to it was a design, you know, we didn't buy it because it was designed by someone. We bought it because it was a nice couch or a nice table. It was, you know, it was done in a tradition that was easy for us to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, it's really nice design, and you can see that it's well thought through. But I think that's a sort of a base of the Scandinavian or Nordic countries, that you don't buy anything if it's just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do something, right? Because economically, it's been hard times. But I also think there's enormous change now, as you're saying, because, you know, things are moving out of our countries,
mm-hmm.
and we have to make a big step change to be at the forefront of design again. And design will change. It will be something, it will be strategic design. And there I think that we have in the Nordic countries, because we are democracies in, sometimes, you know, it's very good to have the democracies, but things also takes a very long time when we do things, because we have to talk them over and over, and it's a consensus culture, especially in Sweden, right? You know, it goes on and on and on. but it's actually, you know, that's where your ideas come from, and
mm-hmm.
so when I'm in Asia and see, you know, one-party states, I am a little bit relaxed, because they will probably not be that innovative, because it's not in the society. In our society, because we have, you know, huge taxes, you have to be very innovative to survive. Generally, you know.
You're talking about Sweden now again?
Yeah, and Denmark. You know, you have to. So the system, the political system, is openness and.
Well, what do you think? I mean, since the topic of tonight is supposed to be about sort of social awareness and sustainability, do you think that's always been very much a part of the design process or the design thinking in each of your countries? Is that something that has become more acute over the past few years? I mean, when we were looking at themes for the Triennial, it's something that we certainly noticed as something that kind of this thrust in design. But I know that there's always been sort of a certain amount of that in design in Scandinavia. But I don't know if you've seen even more over the years.
I think in Sweden, it started at the late 60s. And I was kind of protesting against that, because we'd like to work with aesthetics. Mm-hmm. And it was like that was forbidden. We should take responsibility and do practical things, and they are not supposed to be beautiful. Mm-hmm. that's what I perceived. But so we protested against that, and but now it's coming back. Mm-hmm. I think everybody sees that it's really, really important.
But do you see it? I'm trying to think of Swedish design in the 60s. I don't know. Do you see it more sort of melding with kind of aesthetics now? Melding or kind of mixing, sort of combining aesthetics with kind of this idea of socially responsible design, or do you see aesthetics also sort of not being of importance anymore?
Well, if we do something new, people has to love it. You have to love it, otherwise I think it's pointless. Mm-hmm. And that we can do that as designers, and they hopefully we will love it because it looks beautiful, and it is beautiful, and it's practical and environmental friendly, and that everything. It's always like a puzzle. And
Well, talk about the piece that's in the show, the ES Orcel cargo carrier. I mean, as an example of, I mean, I assume that would be one example of how you're combining both this socially responsible design with, I mean, it's a beautiful object unto itself. So talk a little bit about sort of how that came about and who the client was.
Yeah, it came about from, it was Toyota actually, car manufacturer in Japan, asking Wallenius Wilhelmsen, which is a cargo company. They freight a lot of stuff across the oceans worldwide. And they asked them to join this world show, trade show in Aichi in Japan. And so Wallenius Wilhelmsen, they don't make any products, they do service. So they thought, well, what are we going to do? And they asked us, and we came up with the idea that they should propose how future ocean freight should be done. So, but what it is actually, it's not a ship. It's a manifested vision. It's like their environmental vision, and we made this model of a conceptual vessel. So it's like an icon for the people working in that company to gather around, and it's like a target to aim for the future. So it probably won't look like that.
So what are some of the really innovative aspects of it?
Oh, you mean technologically?
Yeah.
It has fins to take up the energy from the rocking motion of traveling across the ocean. And so
power.
Yeah, so it can sort of, and this, by the way, is a Norwegian concept. We work a lot with Norwegians in this project, marine architects. And it has solar panels folding up, also working as sails. So there are resources out on the ocean that is really there naturally, and we have used it for centuries to, we have been sailing for, and now we got fossil fuel the last 100 or 50 years that enables us to, so, but it will end.
Right. So what you said when we were going through the galleries earlier, you were talking about sort of how they're taking some of those sort of isolated, kind of like whether it's the wave power or solar power, and sort of isolating those innovations and putting them
they're testing them right now.
So what, I mean, are they on large-scale boats, or are they on...
Yeah, huge boats. But for example, the solar panels, they test just to get the power to the crew areas to light up for lighting and heating, but it's sufficient. It's enough to do that at this moment. And it's just small scale. I mean, on the sails that they could gather much more solar energy.
Right. And so what about socially responsible design in outside of Sweden and Finland, for example? I mean, do you see this sort of trend, this kind of upturn in terms of this type of design? Has it always been there?
Yeah, I could kind of partly agree with what I said earlier, but it's the Finnish education system that actually was really strict. There's only few schools, and all the masters from 30s to 40s to 50s, few architects, and then Tapio Virkkala, Ilmari Tapiovar, they all belong to the school of, in a nutshell, form follows function, but also the fact that Finland didn't have so many raw materials, you had to focus, and ornament was a crime. There was a huge kind of movement against textile arts because it's a waste of time, there's no function behind it. And against that there was a movement, I guess, with formalism that came maybe around the same time, maybe a bit later to Finland. But then this Viktor Papanek's era, he was teaching in Finland as well, and this has influenced a lot the teachers in the school. So that has affected that. It's always kind of been this common sense, Nordic common sense. One could say that you have your responsibility. You can't just. It's the same as copying or doing something illegal. It's kind of in your mentality.
Right.
But what's happening now? It's everybody has to involve that in your work. It comes as a given.
when you say has to, is that like, I mean, is it a law or is it, I mean...
it is, yeah, actually. In many ways. You have to, if particular projects are one-off or if they go to mass production, you're really, at the end, you're the one who's responsible for so many unknown reasons.
So what sort of things do you have to follow? What are some of the rules, the regulations that you have to...
Well, a lot of comes from using materials, using particular production processes. Those are the usual laws that you have to follow, which are under the EU coding system at the moment. But
well, for example, like with the Shigeru Bond, with the 10-unit system. I mean, how long was that in development for, and what were the considerations when you finally produced it?
Yeah, to that particular project, there was not really, we didn't find any law that was directly regarding social responsibility or sustainability. The material itself was quite useful. It was huge. Tons of waste, industrial production waste that had to be put somewhere. And the company UPM was quite clever to utilize that as massive profiles within the company to use inside paper rolls or use as corner projectors and so on. And that's how the project started, actually. And it also worked. It had many different levels how we worked on the project, but it was mainly what we had to be careful that can this material start burning by itself? Is it can you burn this if there's harmful gases and so on? These like very material-oriented things that has been there for quite a long time.
And what was the material? Can you just tell the audience? I don't know if everyone is familiar with the 10-unit system, but can you just talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, it was this project actually, to give the background a bit, it was something that Shigeru Bond was fascinated with, minimum packaging, minimum cost of putting a chair into production and making a systematic approach to that. So he designed in 1994 a wooden chair, which is just one particular L shape. And by turning that one particular shape into different directions, you get the front legs of the chair and the back legs of the chair and the backrest of the chair. So you could make long benches, you could make long benches with the backrest and small table and stool and so forth. But when it comes to wooden manufacturing, there's lots of faults in preciseness, and it becomes quite expensive as well. So he kind of had this project ongoing in his mind, but never found a manufacturer for that. And then we happened to collaborate with Shigeru Bond regarding this new material, and we made this temporary pavilion. And when he saw these huge extrusion machines, he thought that, okay, we could just extrude this L profile and just chop it. And he kind of suggested this, and then we realized that the strength wasn't enough. So the project actually lasted close to 3 years, and eventually this big paper waste company paper company whose waste we used got so interested that they really studied how they could injection mold this material. And to us, it was a very clever test run, since the mold cost was tiny. We only needed to injection mold one tiny piece, and you get the benefit of identical pieces because it's industrially produced to a one mold, and also engages people. It's not. You can look at it as okay, it's a clever project. You can build your own chair or disassemble, buy more parts and make it longer. But the mentality is kind of like a manifestation of newness, and I believe strongly if within our company as well, if we give a lot of importance to newness, there is not necessarily so much new products coming out that just look different or are blue or yellow. But the material itself, long story short, it's paper laminate, which is PP or polyester plastics, which comes from stickers and paper laminates and specialty papers. And this ground together makes this paper plastic composite. So it's quite a I think quite a big percentage of recycled material is in those profiles.
And then is that recyclable afterwards? I mean, if
yes, you can burn it or you can put it back to production, grind it, and then reuse.
Amazing. And what about Denmark in terms of socially responsible design? I mean, I know you're kind of knee deep in it in terms of the index awards, but have you seen an upswing?
Yeah, I think there's two problems basically. There's one where you start redesigning things for the production, where you make smarter materials, you use the materials in a smarter way, and that is going on. There's a lot of young designers. I think the biggest problem there is the knowledge of new materials and also where they sourced, how they sourced, because there's a lot of green materials. A lot of people stamp all the materials that they're green, they're good for environment, and they're not because they're shipped in from Asia, Africa. If you start really looking what is sustainable, then we still have a lot of problems. The good thing, and that's the other part, is I think that most Scandinavian countries are ready for a change. They're not that far because we have legislations that we have to find out where is things sourced and how the energy are used, and we don't have BREEAM or LEED or whatever, but we have the normal national way of building is that we do quite clever buildings. So I think that there's a huge sort of intake in the population who really wants to go the sustainable way. The lack is to get the industry there, because the industry are of course saying we don't want to be first movers. The good thing is that I think in 5 years oil will be so expensive that we'll be there. It's not about who will be the first mover. The ones who's not moving will have a problem. So I think for the designers in Denmark, it's the best years to come. It's going to be fabulous because we have to redesign everything basically. And hopefully, I think it's Scandinavian designers because they're quite good and they think about it. They are system design, and that's what I like about when you look at the producers in Scandinavian. It's not. It all belongs to a family, and I think that's also what is known about Nordic design. It's not a chair that looks like a funny Donald Duck thing and a lamp that looks like something. Everything is sort of fitted in, so you can actually buy stuff from Finland that will go in with the ones I have from Norway. And I think that's a really cool thing. And when you buy a plate, the plates are sort of the same size, and you can stack them. You can actually have 20 plates. And when I walked around in Brooklyn yesterday and saw funny shaped plates, which is they're good fun. But there's a waste of material, waste of a lot of things, and these things will be out. And I think, because we have, producers in the Nordic countries that is, we call it minimalistic, I don't know what it, but have sort of clean things, we don't want waste, how can we actually, we rather think about a system where we have less waste and we can take the same thing and turn it around and it's more than one thing. So I think the prosperity is quite good. And I think the best thing is the whole market is ready for it.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of my questions was all about this idea of homogeneity within Nordic design. I mean, you were saying that they can all, I mean, if you buy something from Finland or buy something from Norway, it can fit with something from Denmark. I mean, do you think it's too homogeneous, or do you think that there's a desire to kind of, I see this sort of trend, and you can kind of see it a little bit up in the Triennial, where as we reach globally, there seems to be more of an interest to kind of act locally or to kind of design locally, to have more of a kind of an individual identity rather than kind of this overarching, whether it's Nordic design or South American design or whatever. So do you see it more homogeneous than you do individual countries?
There's something we have in common, which is this idea that in society you actually have to collaborate to get things to work. And you Americans probably think it sounds crazy, but we even trust the government to take a part in that discussion. And in terms of sustainability, I think there's something happening at the moment that we still haven't seen the results of. And it's that the focus is shifting from sustainable production to sustainable consumption. But that's challenging the notion of what's a legitimate design object. So the young generation are really looking into services and working with both public and private services to improve them. So we see people working with hospitals. How can you create better patient pathways? Working with elderly that suffer from dementia. Working with schools to redesign educational curricula. All using design methods and tools. And there's been loads happening in Denmark, a lot happening in Norway lately. Don't know so much about the other countries. But there's a whole new generation that's challenging what's a legitimate design object. And for me, as an old industrial designer educated in America, I learned that you're supposed to combine beauty, but try to solve problems that are fundamental human needs. And the fundamental human needs in our countries at the moment aren't about material wealth. They're about healthy living, they're about smart transport, they're about decent financial systems, and they're about energy usage. So there's a whole new thing happening where we might in a few years starting to see service concepts be exported with a Scandinavian design touch to them. It'll be exciting to see.
Well, because I know live-work is very much it's all about service. And that was one of my questions for you. It's like, what is a design service? It almost is something intangible to a certain extent, although you very much rely on tangible things to kind of help create it. But can you talk a little bit more about what live-work does and some of the services, design services that you do?
Sure. We've been doing quite some interesting work in Denmark as well, and the funny thing when we talked about service design, people said, you know, we used to do that in Denmark in the 50s, but it's a lost art. Because architects went into hospitals and designed the hospital furniture and the routines for how things were done inside. And then the design disciplines are kind of narrowed in to focus on separate objects. And I think that's starting to come back. But we've done some amazing work now with older people suffering from dementia. And there's always design work at the end, all the tangible things that people need to interact with when a loved one is starting to lose their memory and changing their behavior and so on.
But it's starting with a need or a problem, as opposed to starting with an object that needs to be redesigned, like a chair or whatever.
I think particularly with the younger generation, we see that type of idealism, and I think in many ways that's where industrial design came from. You know, there's a huge need for better products after the First World War, and it did amazing things to lift people out of poverty. You know, what design of white goods did to bring women out into the workplace was amazing. But we've kind of reached a natural plateau of physical wealth, at least in our countries, that I think means that the focus is shifting. And I think in Sweden there's been some amazing work done around energy consumption. So just the fact that by law they're putting in an infrastructure that you have to be able to digitally read every energy meter enables brand new types of services where people can actually see how much energy they're using. And start to control their energy using in much smarter ways and so on.
Well, I think there's a couple of objects I think some of you saw in the from Sweden, which is they're domestic products, and they're all about just making the individual more aware of how much power he or she is using, whether it's through this power aware cord that lights up bright blue if you're using a hairdryer or vacuum cleaner that uses a lot of energy, or looking at a clock that kind of compares your energy usage over a 24-hour period of time. So it's those things that I think are really kind of go to the heart of the matter, which is to the individual, to the person, to because they're basically, they have to take ownership. We have to take ownership of that and be responsible.
But I also think it's something, we have in the Nordic country have had so good wealth, even whatever happened since the Second World War, as you say, that we have everything. We can buy everything. It's just a matter: do we want it? Do we want another summer house? Do we want another boat? So people are thinking about how, getting older, what is going to happen? What's about the environment that I actually like? And why don't we get back to some of the habits we had 10 years ago? And I recognize that when we were all up here and we said we have to go down, we all took the stairs and you went to the lift.
Yeah.
And that's very typically
polite.
That, yes, maybe we have a lift where we don't use it. You use it if it's sort of 4 or 5 stories, but if it's just 2 stories, you just walk because it's good for you. It takes shorter time, right? And I think I can see it's coming back slowly, that we want to do things that we did before we were rich, but maybe had more joy. So we're biking. There's more bikes than ever. People are, producing new bikes. You have a different kind of bikes. You can have your kids in your bikes. There's a lot of things happening where, instead of having fancy technical design, we go back to sort of a more craft thing, without losing the good life that we have with pension and all these things.
And what about Iceland?
Yeah, I think we're a bit in the same place in that sense. The sustainable question is very strong with Icelandic designers, especially young designers. We have a lot of the art school has changed a lot, so we have had many more people coming out of the school with design knowledge, Iceland, that they have learned in Iceland. Before, most people went abroad, like architects and product designers and fashion designers, so we only have educated them in Iceland for 10 years. But there's a strong feeling there for like sustainability, and but the situation in Iceland is a bit different when it comes to energy, because we have so much geothermal energy, and we use a lot of water, and we're not sustainable in that sense. But of course, it's clean energy. So I think this, and we're also an island, and we have been a bit behind in that sense, I would say, in being very. The Scandinavians are more conscious and more. They have bad conscience about, But in other senses, we are going that way.
And is the impetus government? Because I feel like here in the United States, if there was stronger sort of regulations or incentives, whether it's tax incentives or, something that's monetary, that there would be more. I think you would feel more invested in sort of, I think the bigger population, the greater population would be more invested in that. And I don't know if that's the way in the Nordic countries. Are there tax incentives for putting in solar panels or having, geothermal energy?
Yeah, there's a lot of incentive. And I think more is coming up. Electrical cars are, in Denmark, cars are taxed 400%, which makes
400%.
400%, yes. So that makes it quite a.
I wonder there's more bicycles.
And that's why we have smaller cars, because we cannot afford it. But the incentive of having electrical cars is that there's no tax on electrical cars, and that's why Better Place. The American setup is very interested in Denmark, because right now the problem is that we have a conservative liberal government, and it seems that this legislation is running out in 2012 and they will not renew it. I think when we get there they'll probably do it, because they can see there's a lot of workspaces for Denmark in it. But yes, so there's legislation, there's a lot of things going on, moving you the right direction. I think to do it in America is a totally different ball game, I don't know where to start. You probably start in smaller states, and because I think, you know, in the Nordic countries, the government, the state is very involved in your daily life. And you would call us communists and all of the kind of things, but you know, we don't feel that way. But it's just a way it is, and it's working, you know, almost.
Well, I think it seems like in the United States it has to come from the top down and the bottom up, I think, simultaneously. I mean, I think there's certainly lots of grassroots, but I think we're also, when you think of us geographically, it's such a huge country, and you know, each state is the size of a country. So it's harder to kind of get a sort of critical mass to kind of...
But you have some of the best sustainable design, some of the best sustainable buildings are actually in the States. So I think there's a lot of people who would like to go that way, but I think the way you've set up the things is that, you know, government cannot act as fast as they can in Europe. Or you're not used to it, right? I mean,
right. What about incentives in other countries? In Norway, are there?
There are quite a lot of financial incentives for making homes more energy efficient. You actually get money to do it. It's not just tax reduction. We only tax our cars 300%.
Yeah. But you also have oil, right? We don't have anything. Beaches.
But I think the stronger thing is what connects us, this idea that everyone needs to try to work together to create good shared solutions. And I think that comes out in the product designs, and I think it comes out in the way services are designed, and obviously government is playing a role in making it happen.
What about in Iceland? Do you know of incentives?
Yes, it's with cars now. If you buy, I don't know how much taxes there are on cars in Iceland. They're quite expensive, but if you buy like, they've been making quite a lot of experiments with vetnik, it's hydro-fueled. Because we see in Iceland that we could perhaps, because we have so much energy, if we could drive our cars with our own energy, I mean, and we could be a test place for that. So they have been developing cars that are driven by that, and you have finance. They take the taxes away if you buy cars that are that. Yeah.
And what about Sweden and Finland? Incentives?
Same in Finland when it comes to taxation if you have an electric car, or I think it might be going more in the future towards that. What size, what's your footprint for the city if you live in a particular space, and how much do you use your car? Yeah, and it's supported if a corporation makes a decision of developing something which is towards a more sustainable future. You can write those off in taxes, somewhat. But I think it's having all this discussion now. I don't think that's the main reason why things are going to that direction. It's more the mind and it's not because of money, really. That's at least how I feel. People feel better. You still have to pay a lot more, anyhow, if you take the greener solution. But it's your own kind of mental decision that this is better.
Right, your conscience. Sweden?
I don't know so much about that. I think there's some. Do you know, Henrik?
Biltullen, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have in Stockholm a system for we have to pay tax just to enter the city with a car. So things like that.
Right.
Punishment.
Right. We tried to do that here in New York and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So, I might throw it open to the audience now. Are there questions? We have a mic. Erin has a mic that she will pass around if there are questions.
Hi, thank you. I'm curious, you speak of your countries as islands and as isolated, and we Americans see you as smaller players in the world, but we're living in a global economy, and the issues that we're talking about are global issues. And I see sort of the David and Goliath possibility here of the influence of your great minds and your great technology. Can you speak to us a little bit about that, of what do you see as the power and the impact of your perspective on what are these global issues? You can't be isolated anymore, I guess is my point. And I think you have a lot to offer.
I would like to say something. I think we as designers, I think if you see that as a community, we have great power to do things, and I think that is a global community. Are the designers here tonight? Yeah. I mean, I think we really together can do a lot. Actually, that was not your question, maybe, but.
To back you up on that, I think there's a global market for good ideas, and we steal all the good ideas we find, and some of the good ideas we have, we hope someone else will steal from us. And of course, they need to be adapted to a local context. It's kind of tempting to think you can just move a concept from one culture to another. But I think it becomes very brittle and can quickly fall apart. But kind of the core of good ideas belong to us all, don't they?
I think as well that there's a I think there's a trend starting, and like trends, they start slowly and they start in perhaps in many places, but then they expand, and they tend to multiply. And from my point of view, I think it was 20 years ago, there was this sustainable and environmental discussion going on for quite a while, but then it sort of faded in a way. But then it comes up now much stronger. And now, well, from my point of view, it's for real now. And it's because of necessities, and so I think that's the thing that's going to happen.
I also think that if you look at the design, there's some design that would be global. There's some ideas we can use globally, and we have to use globally. And of course, in the Nordic countries, we are out with the radar to find out what can we steal from South America, South Africa, wherever it is, and transform them into our system. And there will be other designs which I call system designs, and I like the iPhone. The iPhone is a mass-produced thing from China. It's probably, I don't think there's any IPs in an iPhone, right? It's stolen from somewhere else, put nicely, smartly together. It's really well designed, it's well branded. And my iPhone is my iPhone because I have stuff on my iPhones that you don't have on your iPhone. So I actually have a personal iPhone, even though this is produced in I don't know how many billions of phones. And I think that kind of design will be a global design. And I think in the Scandinavian countries, we could do one or two or three of these designs. We have Nokia in Finland, and we have Ericsson, we have two mobile, big players. In Denmark, we have the problem that we just have one or two big companies. The rest is small, medium-sized companies because it's not in the tradition of running big companies. But I think we'll have designs that we can sell. And then the other part of it is that living in a global world, I think I can design things for India, which is just working in India. And from my job in Index, I think I meet so many people designing stuff which I call design, which is another nice-looking stupid lamp who's absolutely doing nothing. And then, just there. Instead of spending the time on designing something for people who really needs a design solution. And that's why I think in the Western world, and I can see a lot of the young designers in Denmark, they're looking because it's tough to be a young designer and come through in the design world, because you have to know your way around, especially in Denmark. If you make a chair, you know, they always refer to, you know, the old classic Danish chairs, you know, can it sell as much as a PK22? And of course it can't, because you're young, nobody knows you. So they're looking for other markets, and that's why I think it's a huge need for designers to come and give ideas and design that fit into that society. As you said, you know, we cannot design for India in Denmark, but we can go to India with the education we have and design stuff there. I just realized through Index that for years I always thought that people in Asia, they look really stupid when they were driving with a helmet on their motorbikes. And I realized that all the snowboarders, they didn't use helmets. And the reason why is that all helmets are produced for a European American face, and Asians have a different face, a different head. An Asian can actually put a cup of water on the back of the head. If you're a European, you can't do that. So that's why it's not fitting the Chinese. And that's a big thing, that we actually mass produce things that we think globally will fit other people. It won't. So now there's something called Size China. It's a company out of Hong Kong that has measured, I think, 4,000 Chinese and found out, you know, the shape of it, you know, a middle Chinese head, which has now changed. So you can buy helmets, you know, for all these things. And that's things we have to go back. You know, we just spend so much ourselves, and that's, you know, that's what I call design. That's globally designed, but we have to tweak it so it will be used. If not, we'll fail dramatically.
Can I mention another thing?
Absolutely.
And I don't know about you guys, but we certainly don't consider ourselves a Norwegian design company or even Scandinavian design company. And I've been meeting clients here this week, the American clients, but I think we probably do bring a certain ethos around the kind of work we want to do to these clients, and they are clients that are interested in kind of a social democratic approach to how things are designed. It's hard to tell us. Maybe it's more that kind of a thing that we're taking with us. I think it's an attitude about which things we would like to design rather than exactly how it's done.
I could agree with that. I mean, in Finland, a company wouldn't survive if they wouldn't think outside of the borders. It would just immediately vanish. The successful designers and companies that use design are the ones that have looked abroad first, actually, and then kind of within our country's limits. There's this terminology, Finnish design or Scandinavian design, which Finland quite often falls into, although Finland doesn't belong to Scandinavia officially, geographically. But all the top names that kind of built this Finnish design heritage, they were the most cosmopolitan people. Alvar Aalto, Tapio Virkkala, Kai Frank, I know that they were the first ones who tried the airplane for the first time and really brought the influence, and actually that's how they realized that how to develop, how to improve in aesthetics or in function. Bless you. So
one thing I kept on getting asked as a curator from journalists was, you know, is this a trend, this idea of socially responsible design? And is it a trend? Is it something that's just here for the next few years and then it will, you know, be something else? And so I'm curious, what would be your answers? I have my own, but...
Yes, it will be. I mean, I think there will be parts of the world where a human body is not counting as much as it should. But I think as we're getting more and more aware of what's going on, and more aware about that it's not, the wealth is not equally divided. And if we want to earn more money, because I think good design for people who are in need, you know, or people who need things redesigned, is actually very good business. A lot of designers know that, and they're fighting for it. A lot of the people who's manufacturing and producing these things, they don't believe it. But I rather sell 2 million one item in Bombay than 20 to some nice people in Copenhagen. So it's about, you know, your content, but also, you know, what you're designing, is that actually moving the world? And I think that it will. You know, I think more and more people are going that way, and I hope that people are more and more looking for the social awareness that we are all here, and because we're all here, we should be taken care of in one way or the other. Of course, there'll be cultural differences, but yes, so social awareness is a major thing. It's in the whole democracy process, right? So.
When you talk about trends, there are trends on many levels. There are micro trends, and there are mega trends and giga trends, and I think this trend would be a super duper way up, because I think it's we have come this far now. Humankind has come this far, and I think it will be really difficult or strange to go backwards. Don't you think? Well, so I think we understand that we need to take care of each other. And,
well, I think that some people think that it's the fickleness of consumers, that, you know, it's sort of a thing that, you know, might be important now, but maybe not in the future. So I think it's, I don't know, I just had a lot of journalists ask me that question. I think it's here to stay. I think it's come to such a, you know, kind of a pinnacle in many ways, but there are others that are very doubtful.
I think the concept around sustainability is shifting as well, because, well, first of all, I think it used to be very ecologically oriented, but now you see that sustainability is about economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. So we see we're talking much more about resilience than sustainability, which I think will make sense to more people, because it's about how you create resilient products and resilient services that adapt well to change, but are very robust and can live for a long time. So I've got huge faith in that.
Yeah. Things that look more beautiful over time. More of that, I think I would like to.
But I also think it's I mean, we are you know, Sweden is a big country, you know, square meter wise, with, you know, few people. In Denmark, you know, we're a smaller country. Iceland is even smaller than that, but still we have a lot of space. You know, we don't have high rise really. You know, we'd like to have one, just to have one, but you know, dramatically failing because we are just farmers, right? And I think so that's the society you should see. That's sort of the game we have to work in. You have totally different problems, and when we look into America, you know, it's I don't understand why this healthcare reform just didn't, you know. Everybody should be happy, right? And they weren't. Even people I respect said no, it's not good that you know. And I think that's why it's sometimes it's difficult when we're looking at America, because America also have the potential of moving things when they need to move. You know, we always sort of the cavalry is coming, saving us from no one. But right now, maybe they're not so agile, right? So I always said, you know, the day when we really are in deep shit, they will start producing stuff, you know, that would drag us out of that we have to rely on fossil fuels. I'm a little bit afraid they don't. And that's why I'm very happy that, you know, in Denmark and Sweden and also Norway, there's a lot of money going into how can we solve this energy and how can we decouple the energy and economics from the rest of society. And I think the Nordic countries have done that, you know, since '72, when we get the shock when the Arabs took over the business. And it was just Norway who had their own oil, but the rest of us, you know, had to learn how to do that thing. And if we can do that, then there's a way forward. And maybe we can teach others to do that, but it will take a long time, you know, because even though, you know, to Germany and to England, there's a lot of difference in the way that society is built.
Any other questions from the audience?
You talked about the shift from sustainable production to sustainable consumption. Can you elaborate a little more on that in terms of how does it affect the production economy? And secondly, give sort of an example of how a service concept really worked in this case in terms of sustainable consumption?
I think Zipcar here in New York is a fantastic example because it changes the business model of the car from a product into a service. And when the economy around the product changes, then you might think about designing the product differently. I mean, I would envision if your money is made from keeping a car on the road for as long as possible, you'll design it in a very, very sustainable way to last 20, 30, 40 years rather than 7. So as long as you can meet the needs of people, in this case for the need to get from A to B and offer another type of solution, then I think there's huge opportunities in that.
There was another question over there.
Just as a young designer who's eager to learn from your tradition, which seems to be relatively successful, I wanted to ask what advice would you have for people curious about it, other than coming to panels like this?
Yeah. Use your creativity and because if you're a design student, you've been working a lot of finding connections to your deeper, to your senses and to your heart, and you can use that. Please use that later on with your customers and help them do that trip themselves. You can guide them into that way of thinking and thinking with your gut more than with your head.
I think it's about learning a methodology. I think when I can see Danish students and the way I learned it from nice architects, famous architects who learned it, it was a methodology. How do you actually analyze? How do you sketch things? And I can see a lot of because I teach at the Royal Academy, that when we have foreign students, they would really like to do some form, so they start making the form instead of doing the analyzing. Of course, you can always have the nice form, but if you push it in back, but have your methodology, because you're going to work with 200 different clients, 200 different setup, where you're not going to use your thing. That's why in architecture right now, I think architecture have lost it completely because they're doing blips and blobs all over the world. They have no meaning. I mean, the first blob and blub was really nice. If there was Guggenheims all over New York, it would be terrible, right? But there's just one Guggenheim and one lipstick, and that's why they stick out. And so I think it's how get the methodology correct, and then it's easy.
Can I offer a third perspective, and then maybe you can offer him an internship in the end?
There's a lot that one can learn from previous mistakes and previous successful products. What has been done, and it's really good to look at actually what Lavrans was explaining, that one should now focus on the robustness that actually passes the test of time, and then quite early on you realize is it because of trends, that is it service design or product oriented, that if it's going to die down after a few years, it will. Even some people consider a product successful if it's shown on a design magazine and it sells a lot, but if the lifespan of the product ends within 5 years, did that really make any mark? Kind of similar to these particular archetypes that have survived because of the at one particular time when they were designed, it had enough newness that it's still lasting. Great project. I have to say one about learning about history is that we made more like an educational project that was done in 1973 by Enzo Mari, when he got really tired of this formalism, and when Italian design started becoming really plastic-like. There was the Memphis movement, and Enzo Mari designed this pamphlet that one can build your own almost the whole domestic environment by themselves with nails and just pine boards. And he promised to send this pamphlet for free anyone who sent him a stamp. But people didn't really understand that at that time. They thought it's a style, like a rustic style that you have to do. Anyhow, that was a very successful, and still a lot of people think like that. It wasn't. It was more like a manifestation of that, how to communicate knowledge about design instead of trying to make a successful selling product. But one should look that up. Great project.
And I think to build on that example, I think it's really important to be really clear about the values that you want to bring into your work. It's got a little bit to do with the debate here today, but at least if your ambition is to be a truly innovative designer, it takes a lot of persistence and it takes a lot of patience to do it, and then it really helps to be very clear what you as a designer want to bring to the world. You know, do you want to bring loads of more stuff? Or do you want to bring things that can last for a lifetime? Or, you know, do you want to go and do something completely different? I think that's really important as a driver for innovation. And I think that the Bauhaus couldn't have done what they did if they weren't extremely passionate about humanizing technology. You know, there's a whole very strong value set driving the whole thing. I think it really breeds new thinking.
Thanks.
Any other questions? One more?
You spoke a little bit at the beginning on the far left, or your right, I guess, about kind of a return to craftsmanship, and you're also kind of mentioning now in the middle of the Bauhaus movement. Do you think, I mean, I know that Scandinavia in design has a long tradition of craftsmanship, and do you see any trend there, kind of whether it's towards sustainability through humanization and smaller scale production, or anything kind of around handicraft and the return of an artisanship?
I think the problem is that all the good craftsmen, they are on pension now. Unfortunately, and there's just a few young ones coming up, and they will probably, you know, have a good time because there's not that many, and that's why things are done outside. But I think, how can you design things that, you know, actually where you have a craftsmanship, even though it's maybe done by other trades or it's done somewhere else. But I think that the biggest problem is that, you know, in Denmark, a lot of the people who did the old craft has, you know, are on pension. And the problem with Danish design actually was that we got black and white pictures around the 40s and 50s of American architecture. And we thought, whoa, if they can do that, then that's why Danes actually always is talking about the detail, because we was looking at so much of the detail, because we thought that these photographs, that the detail was really good. When the first architect came back from the States in the 50s, you know, he was laughing, said the details are crap. But at that time, you know, we were so much into detailing, so the Danish detailing is so tough. And over the years, we actually learned to take that from a craftsmanship into industrial production. And that's why I think, you know, if we as designers can design something in an industrial production that can have the quality of a craftsmanship, then that will sell. So I think we have a problem. You know, we basically have a problem that, you know, the craftsmanship have been lost, and there is a demand for craftsmanship.
What about at Artec? I mean, they seem to have, I mean, there's craftsmanship still there. I mean, do you still make the Alto furniture in the same way that over the past 75 years, or is it changed? Has it, the quality is still...
Mainly, yes. Yes, it's really there are some pieces that just has to be done the way they were done. But it's very true that craftsmanship, we have lost it. For example, metal working has almost totally has been diminished within the limits that our production would make any sense. But yes, there is still from the same wood. Some people are
still growing in the woods.
Yes. Yeah, and that's valued, and we value that immensely. And then you can see that if some of the classics lasts, if it's done somewhere in 1930s and still is usable, that's a good example.
Okay. Oh, okay. One more question, and then we'll.
Hello. You mentioned Victor Papanek, which I thought was very interesting because, as I understand it, Design for the Real World, when it came out in 1971, came out in Sweden, I think, first, because he had trouble getting it published in America. And I was wondering to what extent his kind of manifesto or his ethos is still taught in design education in the Nordic countries.
I believe the Design for the Real World is still a must-read in the first year students, and yeah, I hope so. I don't know about Sweden or.
Nope. Have to go back to school.
I think it's coming back. I think it's been away for a while, but
yeah,
it's coming back.
Could be.
Personally, my car's got beer cans all over the front.
Okay. Any other last comments before? Any other comments from the audience? Well, I want to thank you all for coming and thanking the Nordic Cultural Fund too for this sponsoring the great 2 evenings. One more to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.